Hey there, this is your host Brian, and I'd like to introduce you to our special guest today, Paul Beauchemin of PI Profits Agency. Paul Beauchemin brings deep business experience into the private investigator industry. He is president of PI Profits, a results-oriented marketing, sales, and customer service agency dedicated exclusively to private investigators. He's the creator of the Genius Minds of Investigation project, and also previously created and launched Sherlock Docs, an online tool to help PIs create reports and share them with clients using 21st century technology. Today we're going to be talking about how you should think about your private investigator marketing. Paul, thank you so much for being thank you so much for being with us here today.
Great to be with you, Brian.
Oh, and it's always a pleasure to have you. I always learn incredible amounts of marketing knowledge every time we talk. And we actually have quite a few questions to go through today, so how about we just get right to it?
Yep.
All right, so what would you say is the most important attitude private investigators should have about marketing?
Well, that's a great question, Brian. If you don't know how to get clients and you don't have much security or stability in your business, see, business success is very different from job success. A lot of PIs started out in a job, for example, as police officers or whatever, where in a job someone tells you what to do. It's very reactive, whereas in a business you have to be very proactive and seek out business. So you first have to realize there are really only two activities inside of a business that make money, and most activities really don't. The two activities that make money are, lawyers kind of refer to it as billable hours. That's where you actually go out and do your investigating and get paid on your hourly basis. The other activity is marketing. In fact, marketing can be much more profitable use of your time than actually working on a case, believe it or not, because most investigation work is very labor intensive. In other words, you trade hours for dollars directly. Marketing, on the other hand, is very leverageable. So an hour spent on marketing can produce more than an hourly basis in actually working on a case. So successful investigators spend more energy and money on marketing than any other part of the business. Because no matter how much expertise you have as an investigator, if you can't turn prospects into paying clients, then all that expertise is worthless.
Mm-hmm. And I know that there are a lot of business people or people who are trying to start up a business who end up focusing too much on processes of the business that really don't bring in enough money. And I remember last time we had an interview, and anybody who's listening to this should definitely listen to that other interview that Paul has about setting up systems and working on that which is most efficient for your business. So marketing, you would say, is the most important, most efficient thing that brings in money and that all the successful PIs focus on.
Absolutely. You've got to, as I said, you can spend $1 on marketing and return $10 in business. For example, a $200 advertising campaign can bring in a $10,000 client. There's not many other activities that you can really do that can get that return, that kind of return.
Oh, I hear you. But the fact of the matter is a lot of people are skeptical of things. You know, there's so many sources on the internet that try and lure them in, and they become fearful of spending money, especially on advertising. So can you provide any information really on how much they should be spending?
Well, the average private investigation firm spends just 2.5% of their revenues on marketing, which is way below what most businesses spend. The interesting thing about marketing is that you can test what you spend and find out what the return on investment is. So there are many tools available to help you measure whether a Yellow Page ad or a PPC campaign on Google are a good return on your investment. So you constantly need to be testing each time you do an advertising campaign, what is my return? If the advertising is bringing in more business revenue than it's costing you, then you keep doing it on and on. If it's not bringing in more revenue, then you stop it. So it's very easy to test how much you spend, and that's one of the great things about marketing. It's not just put out some money and hope for results. It's something that you can test because there's so many different tools now, where like phone numbers that you can tell exactly where that person saw your ad, personalized URLs for sending out postcards. There's all kinds of tools that help you understand what your return on investment is.
Mm-hmm. I get exactly where you're going. So what it sounds like you're saying also to especially the PIs who need to start investing in marketing is that they just have to do it. They have to be willing to put at least some money down on some source to at least test it to find out if it's worth the returns. They can't just sit idly by and keep trying to pocket their money and then somehow hope that they start getting more customers without actually investing in the marketing that they need to invest in.
Yeah, it's all about testing, and it's about doing it consistently. Consistently testing and run with the winners and let the losers go. One of the things that's really interesting about the PI business is cash flow is a constant problem for private investigators because the business is up and down like a yo-yo. And it's primarily because they don't market consistently.
And I remember we went over that in the past, especially in relation to economics and how the economy's flowing. And a lot of people, because they haven't set up the right systems, the right processes, because they don't do effective marketing that's really going to help keep their business afloat, they become a victim of the state of the economy, and it really jeopardizes a lot of private investigators in their standing because they really don't know what to do at that point because they don't have all of those implementations in place.
Right.
So next up is, because even when people market, they think, well, I must be selling if I'm marketing. I have to sell something, and I have to have a selling personality, and a lot of people don't like that. So many people, including PIs, hate to sell. So why should they change their thinking about selling?
Well, no one likes to be sold, but interestingly, we all like to buy. So marketing is about triggering an action. If you really know in your heart that your service is what your client needs, then you almost have to think of it that you have an ethical obligation to persuade them to hire you. See, there's always an ethical balance that you have to be careful not to cross. Sometimes it's in your client's best interest not to hire you, and in that case, you should not let them hire you. So don't just let people hire you because you think you need the money. Do it only in their best interest. And I'm deliberately using the word client here because if you look at the definition of the word client instead of the word customer, a client is someone that is defined as under the protection of another. And as a private investigator, you have clients and they're under your protection. And you have to do what's in their best interest. And if it's in their best interest for them to hire you, then you need to do all you can to persuade them to hire you. That's ethical and moral.
And that's a great way to look at it, because I think in most positions where someone's selling, and I'm sure there have been a lot of people who've taken, say, a sales job, whether it be cell phones, cars, insurance, anything, and who haven't liked it. That is what their taste, their flavor of selling becomes, and they think, oh, well, if I sell them, I'm being pushy, and I'm trying to force them to buy something or coerce them to buy something, and I just keep asking them the same question over and over and over until they finally say yes. And a lot of people, and I've been in that position, they don't like to sell, and that's how they see selling. But especially with the way you're phrasing it, it sounds like what you're saying is because the client might need it, they really are going to benefit from your services. You're not forcing them, but you're encouraging them to take the right action that's most effective and beneficial for them.
That's right. It's all about your perspective and how you view yourself and how confident you are in your ability to really help that person that needs your help. And, people that call you are usually looking for solutions to a problem or a pain that they have, and your job is to solve that problem or pain.
Absolutely. And so then there's PIs that actually start doing this, and they get their marketing down, and they get their selling down, and it seems like they have their ducks in a row. And I see these PIs, and they have websites, and then they start to talk about themselves a lot. Is this the right approach to marketing as a private investigator?
Well, there's some merit to being an expert, but I don't really think that it's the most effective approach to marketing. The clients are most interested in what you can do for them and their problems, not necessarily who you are. Even if they do hire you because of who you are, it's only because they think that what you can do for them, not who you are. I think the most important approach is to meet customers where they are psychologically, to really get inside their heads and try to imagine their pains and fears. A famous marketer named Robert Collier said that marketing is entering the conversation that the customer is already having in their head. So when you know your customer better than they know themselves, then you will know how to write good copy on your website or an ad for them. And understand that when you create something, for example, let's say you advertise and you're looking for, people are searching for someone that's going to help them with their cheating spouse. If they come to your website and it's all about you and not about how to solve their problem, they're not necessarily going to hire you. But if you have something on your website that says 7 ways to know if your spouse is cheating, sign up for this free report, you'll be able to really attain their interest and get them, where the focus is on them, they'll be attracted to you.
Well, simultaneously also, you're giving them something of value for free in doing that. Plus, at the end, you're also marketing your own services. So you say, hey, look, these are the signs of a cheating spouse. And if this seems to be what they're doing, then firstly, you've already primed your customer to be open to the idea of a private investigator by the end of it, especially because you make them aware of what's going on, of their spouse's actions that they might have been blind to before you gave them this free report. And then at the end, you could say, hey, if these are the signs your spouse is making or showing, then you can call us at this number for a free consultation, and then basically you can go from there in the private investigation.
Right. A lot of PIs put up these, they get hired by so-called marketing firms, and they say, oh, we'll build you a nice website and do all this SEO for you. And you go to their websites, and it's just very generic, and they say, we offer these 57 different services, but that doesn't really address the needs that person is looking for. If they have to click through 4 pages to find out, oh, okay, he serves missing children or something, or whatever the specific problem that the client is having, they won't look any further. So it really is actually better sometimes to put up landing pages which are focused on individual solutions, rather than having a big website and a landing page that's addressed to one specific pain or problem that a customer is having or a client is having. And that way you can direct them into, you can have one report for attorneys that are worried about PIs that don't know how to write a report, for example, and they'll say, learn the 7 ways to find out if a PI is a good report writer, or another one may be about cheating spouses, and another landing page could be about another specialty on missing children, for example. You could put out these free reports or any kind of incentive to get the person to enter their name, their email address, and then you use an autoresponder and you start to connect with this person so they build some trust with you, and eventually they'll contact you. So everybody that comes to a website isn't necessarily going to call on the first click, and that's what few PIs don't understand.
And because I've had this marketing experience, exactly what you're talking about, say with landing pages, for those who don't understand what landing pages are, they've also been called squeeze pages or sales funnels. And what happens is, say you're doing some advertising on Google or Bing or Yahoo or anything, and somebody sees your ad on the side of the sidebar, and it says 7 ways to tell if your spouse is cheating on you, and they click on it, and then, like you said, Paul, about getting their information, That's one of the most important parts. It says, get this free report. Just enter your name and email or whatever other information you may find vital, such as a phone number. And then what you said about autoresponders, it will automatically start sending out emails to them that turns them from what you would call a cold lead into a warm lead. Now they've already acclimated to you. They're used to your business. They're used to you contacting them, and there becomes a sort of rapport between you and them, even though you already set up this system to do it automatically. And if you do it right, it feels personal to them, and that's what starts bringing in the customers, and they will start calling you. They'll start contacting you because you sound like the perfect fit for whatever their needs are. And it just depends on how they come in. So for our listeners' sake, I'll explain it real quick. Say you have a building with several doors in it, and this door goes to this segment of the building, people who are looking for missing children, and then people who are in for cheating spouses. And depending on which door they come in, you have an expert directly talking to them about that. It's not generic like what you were talking about, Paul, about the PI website where they go to a marketing firm and then they come out with this generic looking website that doesn't really cater to anything. It just has options that are cluttered all over it, and there's nothing special about it. But instead, now you're catering specifically to them. They feel very well established, and they enjoy their connection with you, and it brings in an incredible level of customers.
Yeah, that's right. They've got to really be able to think that you really understand them. If they don't think that you understand them, and they're not going to hire you, and that seems funny to think about that, but if you, for example, have a customer or a client that comes in that's looking for, cheating spouse, they have a cheating spouse. If you have an email sequence they go through where you really describe some of the signs and makes them understand or think and believe that you really understand their problem. And the same website cannot appeal to both the person looking for to solve like a problem with cargo theft and a cheating spouse. So these generic websites can't really make a potential client seem like you would really understand them. Sometimes people will just click because they're desperate, but 90% of people that visit your website, they'll just click away because it doesn't address their personal needs. And that's why landing pages are so powerful, because you can address personal needs and make people really feel that you understand their pain, their problems, and that, whether or not you're, Mr. Expert, Private Investigator of the Year, if they feel you can understand their pain, they're going to hire you.
Oh, absolutely. And the same goes for a lot of things in life. It really comes down to empathy and an ability to relate to people. For instance, just real quick before we move on, there's people who've had drug problems, and when they have to get rehabilitated, they're much more responsive to somebody who has also had the same drug problems, who's overcome it, rather than somebody who has no idea what they're going through personally.
Right.
Yeah, and so there's where that empathy is delivered. So something generic that feels like it's stoic or sterile, that doesn't really cater to them, isn't going to weave the story that they need to hear, isn't going to show them that you understand. And so next up really is, what are some of the key motivators for the clients that might hire a private investigator?
Well, this really is kind of relating to your client's needs. And it may sound bad, but people are twice as likely to be motivated by fears as they are by positive attributes. So finding the emotional needs that are unmet is going to be the biggest win for you. People are going to hire you based on emotional decisions, then try to justify with logic. So oftentimes it's when you're writing a landing page, for example, you kind of appeal to the fears and the pain about twice as much as you appeal to the positive. solution to the problem. And you'll actually get better results with that kind of a ratio than just saying, okay, we'll help you, find your cheating spouse or whatever, or we'll, recover your lost cargo or your lost equipment, whatever it is that's in a theft investigation, for example. So it's about appealing to, the basic emotional needs. And you say, well, a lot of people, for example, my clients are all attorneys, and they're not emotional. And I'll give you something very interesting. I saw a survey that showed that the number one attribute attorneys look for when hiring a private investigator is a college degree. And that sounds logical enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it sounds surprising, too. So they went back and interviewed all these attorneys and asked them why don't they hire, for example, people with lots of years of law enforcement experience? And they said the reason they look for a college degree is because they figure that people with college degrees can write good reports. And they have been embarrassed by poor quality reports from private investigators, and they're embarrassed to share those with their clients. And so this embarrassment, this emotional factor, is what drives them to look for college graduates. And so it all boils down, comes back to the emotional just reason, and then they justify it with logic. Oh, college degree seems logical, but it really was an emotional need that drove them to look for that attribute.
Oh, certainly. And you and I have been over that before, where people will justify the decisions they make. They'll rationalize it when really it's an emotional decision, and it can be in anything. And we also discussed it about buying a car. Oh, well, I just need it for commuting, but they'll still buy, this really nice-looking car or something sporty, and they say, oh, I need it to get to work, and it has, it's going to be a little more comfortable, but it's an emotional thing, and that's what people have to cater to, and any good marketer starts to understand this. And what you were talking about, solving a pain, you're alleviating a pain, and people being driven by fear over, say, pleasure. It's just really a survival instinct. And so people are going to be much more driven by fear because since basically the humanity, pretty much every living creature is driven to survive. And so that's completely natural. And when you cater to that, you're likely to get more clients. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's just, it's nature, and you can't fight nature, really, and you have to just learn to adapt your marketing to nature and what people are really like. You have to meet people where they're really at and not what you think they should be at or where you think they should be at. You have to meet them where they're really at.
Indeed, and being a private investigator in a private investigation business, it really sets you up in the right place because people are coming to you not because, I think I'll go see a private investigator today. It's never for pleasure. It's because they're having some sort of pain, whether a cheating spouse, a missing child, stolen cargo, anything. It is a type of pain, and that is the most driving force there is. So being a PI automatically puts you in that position where you are more of an authority for them on alleviating that pain. So when you couple that with your marketing, it sounds like you have a great combo.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, private investigation field, obviously, there's a lot of pain people are trying to solve and trying to resolve problems. So it really deals a lot with the emotions. And so it's ideally suited to good marketing. And if you understand marketing and how to use it, you can really take advantage of that. And PIs in general don't really take advantage of the emotion and good copywriting that goes along with understanding what's in people's heads. And so they don't get a good return on their investment. And it goes back to, I talked about earlier, being able to measure the return on your investment, advertising investment. And,
absolutely.
So they end up, saying, geez, this Yellow Pages ad doesn't work, and it's because it really doesn't connect with the client that's looking for, to solve their problem, and they see a Yellow Pages ad that says, Jones Investigation Services. We service all your investigation needs. Well, that doesn't appeal to anybody's emotional needs. It's just a generic piece of marketing, and so the return might not be very good for that.
Exactly, and then they might think, oh, well, the Yellow Pages don't work, or this form of advertising doesn't work, when really it's their copy, and they just need to improve upon it.
Yeah.
So next up is, for private investigators, what kind of customers should a PI look for?
Well, I think there's three things to keep in mind before you acquire clients. First, you want to have or know that the clients have some kind of high level of emotion built up. This could be a fear, or it could be just a frustration. For example, I mentioned the attorney that's tired of dealing with PIs that provide poor quality written reports. So it's not necessarily fear, but they're frustrated. People have frustrations, and so that could be it's a good thing for you if they have a high level of emotion built up about that. The second thing to look for is that someone is looking for the solution that you can provide. Some people, sometimes people are just on these fishing expeditions trying to sell services to a certain type of client likely to be frustrating to you. A lot of times, one of the interesting things I found in my market research was that private investigation firms have a tremendous amount of uncollected bills. It's a huge problem in the industry, and I think it's primarily because someone calls about a service and it's not the right client, and the person really was just on an expedition to see, well, let me just check to see if my spouse is fishing around, fooling around, for example. And that client really isn't looking for a solution, doesn't have that emotional build up, and it's not really looking. It's just kind of curious. And you shouldn't let someone like that hide you, because it's likely to end up in an unpaid bill. It could be very frustrating to you. And third, you look for clients that have few perceived options outside of what you can provide. And perceived is a key word here. There might be many people that can solve the problems, but you need to let them know why you are really the only viable option. And this really gets down to the idea of a unique selling proposition, or a USP. And one of the things that PIs need to work on for their business is, what is their USP? What special a reason would someone have to hire you as a private investigator? And you have to think about this. And this takes a lot of mental effort, really, to think about what your USP is, because it's not easy just saying, oh, I've got my PI license, I can do all these 57 different investigations, and I'm a jack of all trades. But your USP really differentiates you from all the other private investigators out there, and there's a lot. There's over 30,000 different PIs out in the U.S. alone, and so you have to differentiate yourself, and how you do that is with your USP. And so when you have a USP that you can talk to your clients about, and the ones that have these few perceived options, you can show them how, with your USP, you can solve their unique problem. And, it's a real advantage for you, and that's a real selling point for you.
Oh, absolutely, Paul. And for those who, if this is their first time hearing Paul, last month he and I had an interview, so you could check his channel, and we have an entire interview dedicated to USPs, and there's tremendous wealth of knowledge there. And so, Paul, I'm about to wrap things up here. So to the listener, if you're listening to this interview and you'd like to learn more about how to grow your private investigation business, Paul has generously offered a free 30-minute best practice marketing investigation briefing for listeners of this interview. In this briefing, Paul will help you identify what might be your biggest holes in your marketing strategy, as well as the biggest opportunities for additional profit in your PI business. Keep in mind that spots are limited and will be made available on a first-come, first-served basis. If you're interested or even just curious to learn more, then sign up for one of these spots and reserve a free one-on-one marketing briefing call with Paul at no cost at easypiprofits.com. Once again, that's easypiprofits, that's all one word, .com. Thanks so much for being with us again, Paul. It's been a fantastic interview, and so I want you to take care and have a wonderful day.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Have a good day.